welcome back to the Sad Dad Games podcast. I'm Shan.
I'm Eric.
And I'm Lundy.
We're going to be continuing our discussion about Marvel's Spider-Man. This is our second episode. We'll be talking about our meeting with Jefferson Davis up until Peter Parker's tragic fall from glory to Aunt May's couch at Feast in her office. It's a full fall from his epic high rise in New York.
Being straight up homeless. Yeah.
Yeah, he's homeless. His hubris got the best of him. He thought he could have it all, but he cannot. He has to choose, right?
Yep. We all know that, Spider-Man and his big ego, Peter Parker, he's just, he flew too close to the sun. Yeah.
Right. He has this, well, let's see, what's the classic formula of Spider-Man, right? Like he has his, he has the personal life. He's trying to have a girlfriend. He's trying to have a career, and he's trying to do school. But I guess he's graduated at this point. Like, did I miss one of them? Did I already?
He's Liz Lemon trying to have it all.
Yeah, exactly. And he can never have it all. He has to leave one of them behind, and when he finally chooses to leave one behind, he can have the other two, right? And he always has to learn that lesson. And he just learned it in the Home trilogy for the movies. He chooses to leave his friends behind, and then he can have Spider-Man, right? And he can have a career probably. And so you could probably not get evicted in that formula. So
yeah,
he just gets to be lonely. But that works. That's a winning formula.
But who cares? Who needs friends? It's like, whatever.
I was there once. What did I sacrifice in exchange for friends? I don't know. I gave
Money.
up.
Shan pays all of us. Yeah.
I gave up a little bit of family life for friends, and so now my family life is suffering. But they'll be okay.
So
they're legally bound
cooler.
to me.
Yeah,
we're
cooler than Shan's family. That's what I'm hearing from that.
Exactly. All right. So, beginning of this section. We have the demons trying to encroach on the power vacuum that is left behind because Fisk has been run out of town, or he's been taken out. He's been sent to jail, and so the demons want to take the weapons cache from Fisk. And
not the weapons cache just yet. First, there's they go to the estate sale.
But the estate sale is first.
Yeah.
Okay, my bad. I got them out of order. Yeah, I did
How
not.
Embarrassing for you, Shan.
I did not write down these story beats, so I'm going to get everything wrong. I'm going to have Eric take control on this. I'm going to put it in cruise control.
Why don't I? Because Shan has a structure and stuff and questions and things, but I'll take care of making sure we keep things in order. How's that sound?
Yeah, I'm just going to embarrass myself.
So firstly, right after we met a lot of the initial characters last time, and now Spider-Man gets a call from Yuri that's like, hey, something's going on at the check out the Fisk estate sale, and so he goes over to the Fisk estate sale, and you take out some of the bad guys who are there, who are the demons, but you don't know that they're the demons yet. So, but I like this area. You get to do a nice little introduction to some of the stealth elements. You get to sneak, get some bad guys. I particularly like the one where you're like inside of an air duct, and you open up the grate and you web someone and then pull them into the air duct and then stick them there with webbings. And I was like, who's going to find that guy later? Like you better hope that someone shows up in like an hour or that guy's dead. Like, what if the heat turns on? Like Spider-Man doesn't kill. Like, what are you talking about? That's incredibly dangerous. It's that you don't web up criminals in an HVAC tunnel for the same reason you don't leave babies in a hot car. Like, that's dangerous.
Well, isn't it canonical that the web disintegrates after a couple hours?
Yeah, after a few hours. So I guess he could crawl out.
But
that's not a good solution either, because so let's say he survives, but like the police aren't going to sweep the air vents when they're cleaning up the area. And then, 2 hours later, there's a criminal that just like busts out of the air vents and he's like, nah, I'm going to steal all the stuff now. Like, I was just like, come on, Spidey, some forethought. You got to drop a pin every time you take out a bad guy so the police know where they are at least.
in this storyline, Spidey is working in conjunction with the police force, so maybe they have it in protocol to sweep
Check all
the
the
air
air vents.
ducts.
That's NYPD. Anytime you go after Spider-Man, like, oh, don't forget to do an air vent sweep. And they're like, oh, I hate the air vent sweeps. They,
Oh
they
man,
take so
that
long. I
guy.
crawl up in the air
Yeah,
vent and
it's built into budget.
make sure that Spider-Man didn't leave anyone in there to, die of heat stroke or asphyxiate. Like,
That's exactly right. I would love it for there to be a Spideyverse, like a multiverse variant of Spider-Man, where he comes back for the victims that he has like webbed up into the air ducts, and but he's like a real
and he
spider
sucks them dry.
human. He like actually consumes them like a real spider would.
Just drinks them up like a human smoothie.
Yeah, exactly.
Just get the Simply Orange
That's his
juice straw and you
dessert.
poke it in their tuchus and you suck out all the juices.
Yeah, yeah, that has to be a real thing.
You know what? There are so many Spider-Man variants that probably already exists somewhere,
Exactly.
at least on someone's DeviantArt account.
At least he doesn't let a good human go to waste.
Yeah. So after you in this area, you play as Spider-Man for a little bit, and then we get to the highly controversial Mary Jane sections of the game. There are a few chapters in the game where you have to play as Mary Jane, and these are by a wide margin my least favorite parts of the game. I think that in their very best moments, they add a little bit of story context, and in their very worst moments, they bore me to tears. Like, what business does Mary Jane have sneaking around in a Spider-Man game? You guys have thoughts
They
on this? Like,
they arguably take the game from a 10 to a 9, and it's
yeah,
the only thing that does it in an otherwise perfect game.
I like the idea, like on paper when they were pitching this in the boardroom or wherever. I like the idea that led to this. I just don't like the execution. Like, I like that they were trying to get Mary Jane more involved instead of just the damsel in distress. Like make her a little bit more of an agent in the story. But given how robust the rest of the gameplay is, it feels very restricted and very just eh.
see the vibe that I get from this, I totally agree with that. I think it's a very box standard kind of stripped down stealth that isn't very interesting to play. And so in its best moments, you get some story context, but it's just not super exciting. And in its worst moments, it undermines what it means to be Spider-Man, what it means to be a Spider-Man game. I think that games need high octane upbeats and then downbeats so that you can kind of up and down. And so, because if you're at an 11 all the time, you get exhausted from the game, and also 11's not exciting anymore. And so you need those downbeats in between to kind of ground you and give you a chance to catch your breath. And then when it's exciting again, it feels more exciting. Games that do this really well are, Resident Evil games, particularly Resident Evil 4 and the Resident Evil remake. They do a good job of like that up and down. And so I think that what Insomniac was going for here is they're like, well, we need some downbeats to kind of counteract the high octane, stuff as Spider-Man. But the Spider-Man game, like the open world Spider-Man game formula, has downbeats built into it from a fundamental level. Because when you want a downbeat, you swing around the city and you get that zen downbeat in between missions that way. So the Mary Jane missions are 110% superfluous. You could strip them out of the game, and the dev effort spent on them, I feel like, was wasted. I love these games. I think they're fantastic games, and it's really one of the only blemishes that I can kind of levy against this is that I just feel like it was unnecessary and boring, and they bum me out every time I have to do it.
Yeah, I was going to point out the argument I was making out earlier, that it takes it from a 10 to a 9. I think it's solidly in a 9 also because of the Harry missions, with the Harry Osborn with the science cubes, whatever. Those things are also super lame.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
The
but
Harry, oh yeah, the Harry Osborn side quests where you have to swing through like pollution clouds and stuff. Where they're
what
fine,
the
they're inoffensive,
yeah,
but they're boring. Yeah,
super boring. But
yeah.
I 100% agree with you in that you make your own pacing in this game. You choose when to go downbeat, you choose when to go medium beat, and you choose when to go through story beat. And so you make the perfect pacing of the game. And they are trying to force you into a prolonged, boring downbeat, and it absolutely throttles the pacing. But not only that, what absolutely kills it is that it's an insta fail stealth, and that
The worst kind.
is, yeah, I they actually took that into consideration for I think it was Miles Morales because they
Spider-Man
didn't.
2. Because the
Spider-Man
Miles
2,
Morales
sorry.
ones doesn't
Yeah,
have
that's
any
right.
like, yeah.
Sorry, that's what I was getting at. Spider-Man 2, they brought back Mary Jane and they don't have insta-fail. So they did fix that because they knew that like you just can't do it, right? It's the same um as like Ashley in Resident Evil 4, like how like there are some things you just can't go back to because the fans say it's a red line in the game mechanics. And Instafail is one of those things where it's like if you don't fix this, we will not play your games. It absolutely ruins a game. And Ashley, like when they did the Resident Evil 4 remake, they had to fix how she was your companion and how like she didn't have you didn't have to waste your healing items on her and she could be recovered and it wasn't as like a burden on you to be able to recover her. I don't know. I like it that they have taken like this fan feedback to fix these things, but it did ruin this game in a lot of ways, but
Yeah,
not so epically
I was gonna
like
say
it
I wouldn't
ruins
say
the
that
game
it
in
ruined the
totality.
game,
It
but
just
it
ruined these
definitely
moments.
it ruined those moments for sure. Yeah. And I have a lot of thoughts about the Mary Jane stealth sections in Spider-Man 2. I'm one of the few people that I think that they're even worse than in the first game for different reasons. But that's whenever we talk about Spider-Man 2 in the future, we can talk about that. But yeah, so I really like the Mary Jane character. I love the relationship she has with Peter, but I just the Mary Jane missions just don't do it for me. They're not my favorite. But it is nice to like there are some aspects about it that are kind of fun. Like in this one, they're not all bad. The parts where you're sneaking around and being stealthy are not very fun, but then sometimes there's some light puzzling thrown in that's not super exciting, but is engaging at least. And so there's this part where Mary Jane is there. She's trying to get she works for the Daily Bugle. She's trying to get some coverage for the Daily Bugle. So she kind of sneakily doesn't lie to the curator there, but she's not all the way honest with her. And she is able to kind of sneak around and she's looking for some secrets, some dirt on Fisk, right? And so you get to solve some little puzzles and go into Fisk's little office there and try to find some stuff. And then she's able to solve those puzzles. She gets some dirt on Fisk, and then shiz hits the fan. Some bad guys show up and punch her real hard in the back of the head. And it looks like a bad time for Mary Jane. But luckily, Spider-Man was there, because Spider-Man's always there when bad things are the foot.
I'm hoping that you've Lundy's seen Parks and Rec because that's what that is referencing.
Ah, it's like a
The
game
game is
is the foot.
the foot.
Yeah. Nope. I haven't seen Parks and Rec.
Wow. That was just me guessing because you haven't seen The Office, but
Yeah.
woof.
Me and mockumentaries. It's not a happy
It's
combination usually. Like
It's like
it
my
takes a
favorite kind
really
of show.
special
Yeah.
like a really special mockumentary. Otherwise I'm just pretty tepid on it.
you need to do some work on yourself, I think,
Yeah.
to be more
Seems like a Lundy
likable
problem.
and all right. Well, unfortunate. Let's move on before I belabor that point. Uh, where were we? I'm all the way stuck on
So
that thought.
So no, you're good. So your control is handed back to Spider-Man. Mary Jane gets her hands on some documents that has something to do with something mysterious called Devil's Breath, which is what's Devil's Breath? And then she gets herself in a bad situation. Her and Spider-Man meet very briefly in a little back room and make a game plan to get out of here safe with the documents. But as Spider-Man is battling the folks and trying to keep Mary Jane safe, the demons, this gang, get a hold of that document that Mary Jane found and are able to escape with it. And so we also find out that through some little dialogue between Mary and Peter is that they're not currently together, that they used to be together, but they are at the moment they're broken up. And I love the little bits of cute dialogue that you get here, like Peter swings away and texts Mary Jane, and Mary Jane's like on her phone while she's still kind of at the estate sale and look at it, and she gets a text from Pete that's just like, oh, I'm sorry that you lost your document or you're going to get in trouble at work or whatever. I'll make it up for you. Dinner at Mix. And then she's like, like the last 6 months didn't even happen. And so there's this, like, they give you these little clues into that, they still care about each other, but, there's some tension there, and there's some, like they just can't really be together, which is something that's a pretty common thread in Spider-Man, is that Mary Jane and Pete, like it's hard to be with Spider-Man because, he can't be as present as you want him to be. And so I kind of get the feeling that that's maybe what caused that, What do you guys think?
And no, Peter is taking them to a romantically charged location on purpose.
Well,
And
yeah, they're
obviously,
like regulars there. It's somewhere they used to go as
yeah.
a couple all the time. Yeah.
So yeah, and so Peter is using it as an excuse, an inconvenient excuse to try to open up a dialogue. Um, so I love how this conversation plays out. I've rewatched this scene right before we jumped on this conversation because like I think this is the best sequence that we've seen in the game so far, or the best cutscene. And so let's see, where is this? How does this play out?
So they
Uh,
end up at Mix,
yeah, yeah.
which
So
is a
they're at
little
Mix,
diner. Yeah.
and they start off with some banter about fries, and the place has changed into an Italian restaurant, but they still have fries. So things have started to change. And she's like, why did, let's see, they're starting to talk about the demons, but she doesn't want to talk about business, so she tries to push that off, and she's like, um, she says, did you get that promotion? So her mind is thinking about uh, Peter. Are you? She wants to know if his life is moving on. She wants to know if his life is moving up, because she is hoping that maybe if he is successful, that he can that she's hopeful that they can be together. I'm guessing that's where her mind is at, because if he's not successful, that's where she knows his mind is going to be more in the Spider-Man world, whereas if he's more successful, that's going to pull him in the wrong direction. So I think that's why she's pushing the conversation in that direction. So did you get that promotion? Oscorp would hire you in a beat and one called to Harry, and so she understands that, like, he Peter as a character really struggles to ask for help, and we see this play out later with him getting evicted and not wanting to ask for help or for money from his aunt, right? And this is one of his fatal flaws.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He one of the things that I think really helps reinforce that, is when he's talking about how he likes to work with Otto, and the good that they're doing and the progress and things like that. She makes the comment, she's like, I've never heard you talk like that before. It's almost like you don't even need your other job. And you can tell that there's a little bit of maybe some hurt, in there, that she's seeing it, and it's kind of a, well, why couldn't you figure this out earlier, when we were still together, kind of a thing. But yeah, I do think that you can tell that there's a little bit of, there's pain on both sides, but there's also a little bit of longing on both sides. And they're kind of in an awkward spot, and they're not totally sure how to handle it.
Yeah, and I like, to your point, Lundy, I like how she's talking about, seems like this job might be even more important than your other job. Of course, talking about Spider-Man, which is like, that takes a lot for not a lot of things are more important to Peter than being Spider-Man, because he feels that deep responsibility towards that. So, and the fact that just earlier in the conversation we hear them talking about, like, Oscorp would hire you in a minute. Peter's basically a genius. Oscorp would hire him in a minute. He's friends with like Harry Osborn, who is the son of the CEO of this giant tech company. Like, he should be there making tons of money doing science. But instead, he chooses to make not very much money doing something that he really believes in, which is the most Spider-Man thing ever. Like, he's behind on his rent. He can't make his bills. He's barely scraping by. But that doesn't matter because he is doing something that he believes in. So another case of Peter sacrificing something to do for the greater good is he's sacrificing money and, comfortable income and living, like having his Peter Parker life side of his life be a little more comfortable. He's sacrificing all of that so that he can do something that he feels like will bring more good into the world by working with Otto. And so even when he's not being Spider-Man, he's being Spider-Man. Like, he just is always trying to do the most good.
So that's really the crux of it, right? Because she notices something. He starts to say, Otto's work could save millions, and I'm right where I should be. So he realizes that there's a utilitarian argument to giving up some of his Spider-Man to focusing on his career. And that would also line up with maybe opening up a relationship with Mary Jane, because right now, if he is Spider-Man, that puts Mary Jane in danger and it causes a schism in their relationship. But having a career would put them back on track together. But now he can save more people if he is with Otto, and he can't save as many people with Oscorp. And so she gets excited. She says, okay, well, actually, you're more excited by this. You can save more people, and you're happy and you're excited and you're optimistic. And I've never seen this happiness inside of you. I'm actually believing you. This seems authentic. But then we get a siren in the background, and she's like, and it's pulling her back to reality. She's like, wait a second, but that reminds me, you're still Spider-Man right now.
Yeah, and I love that just before that, because they kind of start talking about that. And then, I think Peter extends to her some kind of an invitation to be friends. He's like, we could be friends if you want to be. And then she goes, Peter, do you remember why we broke up? And he goes, this feels like a trick question. And then the police car comes by and she goes, saved by the siren. And so it's like, but you're totally right. That like brings her back down. Peter's trying to like kind of get her into his life a little bit more. And then she starts to be like, I like remember why we broke up last time. And then the siren happens and it's all in MJ's head. She's like, this is why it didn't work before.
They're both trying to fool each other because they both want each other.
Yeah. Well, they're very clearly have strong feelings for each other, and they just can't make it work right now.
And some things that I want to kind of touch on as well that I noticed through this playthrough as well. Like we do get some, things that inform, who Mary Jane is as a character, through this conversation as well as that, really boring broken stealth mission. But one of the things that kind of made me laugh, and like it's always bugged me, but like in a good way, where it was like, this is just an annoying character trait, but it fleshes out a character, is like, so Mary Jane works for the Daily Bugle. Having a little bit of a background in media, what Mary Jane does when she goes to that place doing kind of her investigative reporting, highly unethical. Like that breaches a bunch of ethical standards.
Not cool. Yeah.
There are documents like, basically all media organizations abide by the same code of ethics, and she breaches a lot of those things. And she mentions when they're in the diner, she's like, yeah, I'll probably have to talk to legal again. And like,
it's like, girl, get your crap together.
Yeah, it's this thing where it's like the game is letting us know that she is driven and she's passionate about what she does, to a point that she's willing to cross certain lines in what she thinks is right. Like, she's not going to like do anything like massively terrible or anything, she's not going to like torture somebody to get information, but she is willing to lie and, get herself into places where she probably shouldn't be from an ethics standpoint, in some cases a legal standpoint. And the thought that I had this time when she brought that up is I was like, there is no way that if this is a pattern of behavior that any reputable news source is holding on to her. Like that's not going to happen, which like
Like the Daily Bugle.
yeah, the Daily Bugle, we
Well, the
find
Daily
out a little
Bugle's
bit.
not a reputable news source.
Yeah, like we find that out just a short time later when Peter is talking to Yuri. He calls them the demons, and she's like, demons? That sounds like something from the Daily Bugle. And he's like, hey, it's a reputable news source. And she's like, I wouldn't exactly call it news. And Peter's like, well, I think they have some really good writers or something like that, just to kind of stick up. But like it kind of helps build out the world in these really subtle ways to be like, hey, this is how Mary Jane operates. The Daily Bugle isn't quite a reputable news source. It's more of almost a tabloid. But she's trying to do good work there that she wouldn't be able to do at a reputable news source because she violates a lot of these codes of ethics and things like that. But I love the way that fleshes out her character and helps build the world that this exists in.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think that it does a great deal to kind of flesh out Mary Jane's character to get you to understand her a little bit more. I think that it helps you to understand a little bit of what Peter sees in her, because Mary Jane is also really driven by doing what she believes is good. And, definitely not super ethical the way she got into that auction house, like probably not super cool. But in Mary Jane's mind, it's like, it's a Fisk estate. He's a bad dude. And this is like someone who helped him traffic stuff. So if she needs to be a little unethical towards those people, I'm sure that that's like what makes it okay in her brain. Still not technically a cool thing to do. And it shows that like, well, this is one of the things that Peter probably loves about her, is that she's driven and she's smart and she wants to do good things. And doing good things is something that is extremely important to Peter. And it's probably one of the things that he loves about MJ.
Yeah, I haven't put in this paradigm before, and I haven't thought this through, so maybe I don't know how well it holds up, and maybe we'll figure it out as we go. But like, is Peter more of a deontological absolutist on his morality, and is MJ more of a utilitarian, such that she's willing to bend morality to be able to achieve what she needs? Whereas Peter Parker will never bend his morality, and he has to always abide by his ethics, no matter what, such that it will cause, it's like it's like Batman's "I will never ever kill somebody, no matter what," and so we see the Joker throw every single thing possible at him to try to get him to kill, to the point where it causes all these irrational things to happen around him to try to get him to kill somebody, and it's hurting everybody around him because he just can't kill the Joker, right? That's because that's his absolutism. He will never kill the Joker. And so I'm wondering if like that duality of Mary Jane being able to bend things and Peter Parker not, is that what makes their relationship dynamic and interesting, to be able to push and pull on each other, to be able to explore what is ethical or what is moral, but they're always at odds with each other.
I think in a lot of ways they almost, they have the same approach, like they have the same view. It's just that they bend in different ways. Because Peter's a vigilante, Spider-Man's a vigilante, which means he's going outside the law to operate.
But he has his own absolutism. It's not the law's absolutism.
Well, and that's, the same kind of like, from a certain point of view, his vigilantism is unethical, because if he, the laws exist. This is the whole, bringing kind of my Daredevil fandom into it. The laws exist for a reason, and they need to trust the order of law. But then he steps into the vigilante role and breaks the law to support the law. And so Peter's kind of sidestepping the law to do good because he recognizes that the law is flawed and isn't
No,
able to
It's
uphold
a half
in the
measure.
right way.
but his absolutism is that justice must be served.
Yeah, and
Mm,
where I also see a similarity between the two of them, and
mm,
probably where a mutual respect comes in is, Peter, part of, his Spider-Man persona, like a spider, he's kind of trying to weave his web and find the right way to get to whatever solution it is, and he's always going to sacrifice himself. There's certain areas where he's not going to sacrifice, but himself and his own well-being is something that always is on the table,
It's
on the
super
chopping block.
low on his
He's
list
just
of
like,
priorities.
whatever,
Yeah.
like this is the easy out I can take, like, and so he's willing to sacrifice his own well-being, where Mary Jane is maybe more willing to sacrifice the rules or the social norms to get to the same result. Like, they have their own rigid areas, but they have their craftiness and their way to be like, well, this seems to be a no-win scenario. These are the strings that I pull in order to make it work out. And while they might not be the same strings as the other person, I think that they can see in that to say, hey, I wouldn't necessarily pull that string, but I can see that the other person is willing to, and I respect that. And that's something that I hold in, like, whether it's a willingness to, or they just aren't, strong enough in character to, Mary Jane might be like, yeah, if I were in that situation, I wouldn't sacrifice my own well-being. And,
mm.
Peter might be like, I wish that I could, feel comfortable sidestepping something that is a, journalistic standards or legal things, whatever it is. But I do think that they recognize that in each other, that they have similar methods that just manifest themselves in different ways.
I do want to just one sentence really quick. I have a thought that, and I don't want to just correct you, Shan, but
No, I want to correct myself too.
I feel like because when talking about something that's most important to Spider-Man, saying justice will be served, I'd argue that
I
it's
don't
not
think
so
that's
much,
it. I don't think
Yeah.
that's it.
I was gonna say I don't think it's so much that justice will be served; it's that his city needs to be protected. I think that's what
I don't
it
even
comes
think
down
that's
to.
it. I would even correct it to say his absolutism is he is responsible for anything that's within his power
Yes,
to
that's
yes.
yeah.
Because
That's a better way of putting it. And the city is his purview.
His
That's
domain.
his responsibility.
It's within the domain of with great power comes great responsibility. If anything is within his power to be able to be protected, he has to protect it, even if it hurts himself.
Yeah, to a compulsive level almost.
Yes.
Not
Exactly.
almost, to a compulsive level. Yeah.
And to the point of it evicting him, to the point of it hurting his own family, to hurting himself. If he sees something outside of, in his peripheral, he has to drop everything. He has to go do it. If he can be listening on the police scanners, he has to be listening. If he's in school, he has to drop it. That's his neuroticism. That's his compulsion. That's his absolutism. Yeah, we get it now.
That's one of the biggest cruxes of Spider-Man for me.
Yeah.
Is that it's the personal sacrifice to fulfill his responsibility is a huge part of who Spider-Man is. And Insomniac understands that part of Spider-Man really, really well.
And the reason I accidentally fell back on Justice Must Be Served,
it's because you were talking about Batman previously.
No, well, no. That's the people somebody can't be killed. The Justice Must Be Served. That's a Rorschach thing, to the point where he's willing to kill somebody because that person has to serve justice, even if the law won't do it. Right. Yeah. So fascinating. I love the idea of absolutisms and what you're willing to break in order to serve it.
Yeah, I agree. Well, right after this conversation with Peter and Mary Jane, Peter goes to leave. He goes to chase after the police sirens, and then you get one of the last Stan Lee cameos before he died. He passes away in between this game and the Miles Morales game, but you get a Stan Lee cameo, and he pops up and he says, "Good to see you two together again. You always were my favorite." And he does the little and it just warms my heart. I love Stan Lee. He's It's so fun to kind of be able to go back and see him and things again. And also, this might have just been me, but his animation and his motion capture and his character model seemed like miles above what the next best thing in the game. Like his mocap and his model were way more detailed than anything else in the game. It looked just like him. Like
Yeah.
incredible stuff. They clearly spent a lot of time and a lot of effort making sure that 5-second Stan Lee cameo was spot on, and they did
I'm
a great job.
curious if they like pulled the MCU Digidouble mocap that they had for the MCU. They pulled that in. It's like they got every single pixel that they possibly could.
Maybe it looks amazing. Like it looks really incredible.
Yeah.
And even he does this little like head bob that it's just like it's like that's Stan Lee. That's not like a puppet, or that's not like a 3D model saying lines like that. It just looks and feels like Stan Lee.
Oh, also, Eric and I did get to meet Stan Lee a
We
few
did.
years before his passing.
Yeah,
It was
we met
very
him.
important to Eric, but he convinced me he did. He's like he's 90 something. This is our last chance. He's probably not coming back to Fan X, no matter what it costs. And we were very poor, so Eric said we have to pool our resources. We have to get in line, no matter how long it takes. We have to go see him. And Eric, you want to tell your half of the story?
Yeah, it was the first Comic-Con in Salt Lake City. I don't remember what year exactly it was, but it must have been like 2012-ish, 13 maybe, something like
Something
that.
like that.
But we went and we waited in line. I didn't do anything else at Comic-Con. I waited in the Stanley line for literally the whole day because they didn't have like a system in place because it was the first one in Salt Lake. And so there wasn't like a take a card or like here's a buzzer or come back at this time. It was like get in line and wait. And so we waited in line. I don't know, maybe Shan wandered here and there. Like I'm sure that we let each other like go to the bathroom here and there and stuff. But like for pretty much the whole day, I just stood in line and waited to meet Stan Lee. And I had drawn a picture of Spider-Man that I like wanted to. I was dressed up like Peter Parker. I had like a shirt and tie, and I was wearing like a spider suit underneath, so I could go like this and the Spider-Man. So I was like really excited and I was so stoked. And I had a thing where I was going to get to take a picture with him and get his signature. And so I brought this like a picture that I had drawn, and I was going to have him take the picture. And then later when we'd come back, I'd get the signature because it was two separate things. And so we took the picture. It was great. I had like this little miniature speech planned that I was going to say to him. And when the time came, I walked over. I said, "Can you hold this?" Because I had like the picture that I wanted, and he goes, "What?" I said, "Can you just? I drew this. Can you hold the corner?" And he just like held onto the corner of it, and I held the other corner, and I'm just like, oh, just glowing, so excited. And then before I could say "I love you" or "You changed my life" or "Thank you for bringing light into the world," I had to leave the room. Because it's hard to understate how much Spider-Man has had an influence on my life. I learned, and I said this in the last episode, I'm an artist. It's a huge part of who I am. I taught myself how to draw reading Spider-Man comic books. I learned how to I'd be like, I don't know how to draw rain. And then I'd go and I'd pick up a comic book and I'd see how they did it there. And I'd try it at home. And like, that is a big part of who I am. And it's because of those comic books. And, I watched Spider-Man cartoons and I learned how to like, try to be a good person and do the right thing. And I learned those things from Spider-Man and so by proxy from Stan Lee. And so I was just so excited to get to meet him. And unfortunately, I didn't get to get the signature because the event was so not poorly planned, but kind of poorly planned. William Shatner, freaking princess, ruined everyone's life that day. And he
It
just
took
took
a
forever.
Shatner on the day.
Yeah, it took forever being a little diva. And so we ran out of time and I didn't get to get the thing signed. And I never will. I'll never get anything signed by Stan Lee. And it's William Shatner's fault. And I hate that guy. But I did get a picture with him. And so that was incredible. And I have it still. It's incredible.
Yeah, throughout like my 20s, my fascination with celebrity and interest in being in their presence and taking pictures has like been at their peaks and valleys, and it's absolutely plummeted to the point where it's like I don't really care, they're just people, right? um but Stan Lee is one that like I'll never regret. He is peak celebrity, and I would do that 1,000 more times. He deserves all of his accolades, and of all the other ones that I've taken, like Chris Evans was still pretty cool, and that was with Haley Atwell, and Zachary Levi was okay. I don't know.
See, it's just one of those things where, again, like, celebrities are cool. I have a lot of actors and famous people and stuff that I really admire and I think are cool and do cool things. But it's like Stanley is the only celebrity that when he died, I like felt sad. Because, when other actors die, it's like, oh man, that's a bummer. They were a great actor. But when Stan Lee died, I don't know how to say this without sounding over dramatic, but it felt like a friend had died. I felt sad that day. It like made me really blue. And it's because, someone who had created something really important to me wasn't in the world anymore. Like a little bit of color left the world. And it was sad when he died. I was like, every once in a while, it still kind of gets me. So seeing the cameo of him in the game again is always nice. I love seeing Stan.
I think the hardest one for me was Robin Williams, and I hadn't realized how painful it was going to be until it happened. And then I realized how formative he had been on my childhood. And it's like, was it even a formative thing so much as it was how emotional his movies had been during the 90s and how he had been just ha ha funny. And it was always ha ha ah, all of his movies, right? And so he had just like found his way into your living room throughout your entire childhood, and it had been a part of your emotional growth and journey and maturity. And to find out the tragic way in which he had taken his life, and and I know that it was like a complicated situation where it was like a mental health thing where he was out of his control on it, but I think all of us kind of felt the same thing where it's like we didn't want that to have happened to somebody who had brought so much joy into the world, and so we were all just in grief over that because we wanted for him to feel the love that we felt for him. I'm getting sad about it again.
Well, and it's like, I remember when he died, Shan and I, it was when we were in college, and we watched Patch Adams the day that he died, which, if you're curious, is a terrible idea. It's a very sad movie. Yeah. Like, he died, and they were like, let's watch his saddest movie. And it was just, we're all in the room, like just a bunch of adult men watching this movie, like, yeah. But that was another one that was sad. He brought a lot of light into the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one that, like, not to stay on this point too long, we can move on, but like, yeah, Robin Williams that's one that has actually gotten more painful for me as the time has gone on. But anyway, we don't need to dive into that. I'll save that for my therapist on Friday.
There we go. Yeah, he'll pencil it in, and yeah.
He's the reason I go to therapy. It's not a big deal. It's been almost a decade, and I have
every single session is just Lundy talking about how much he misses Robin.
Is it going to be Robin Williams again? It's
part of it, like but like Robin Williams had Lewy body dementia, which is what my dad was diagnosed with. I couldn't remember
the name. Oh, okay.
My dad was diagnosed with Lewy body dementia, so seeing that go through gave me, so there was a lot of similarities and things like that went in. And my dad was a huge Robin Williams fan as well. But anyway.
Well, now I'm starting to understand. It's like I couldn't remember the name. It's like, how did that come to your tongue so quickly? I get it now. Yeah. And I was like, how could it get more complicated? Now I get how it got more complicated.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, so really, really lovely Stan Lee cameo. And then just afterwards, Spider-Man's chasing, he goes after those police sirens, and then we see that he's chasing down the Shocker. And I love every interaction that Peter has with the Shocker is because he just refuses to take the Shocker seriously, even a little bit. Like, the Shocker's real name is Herman Schultz. And the fact that Spider-Man just swings around, he's like, "Hey, Herman, like, how you doing, buddy?" Or just like, oh, he just treats him like a child with like, I don't, for all of you parents or, aunts and uncles or whatever, you walk into a room and a kid's doing something they shouldn't be doing, like, oh, buddy, let me take that away from you. Don't do that. That's dangerous. That's how Spider-Man treats the Shocker. He's like, hey, Herman, oh, don't do that. That's dangerous. Stop doing that, little buddy. Like, it cracks me up. He just,
Yeah.
and the Shocker just gets so mad. He just hates him so much. And Pete's just like, hey there, little guy.
Treats him for the C-lister he is.
Yeah.
I also love that Peter multiple times is like, hey, your design is really cool. Is it cool if we just talk shop for a minute? Like, where,
He's like, you're stupid, but your suit is awesome.
Yeah. Like, can we just talk science? Like, Peter's like, he just belittles him, but at the same time is like, hey, I want to like respect you. Stop doing crime, and we can like be bros because you have some really cool tech, and I want to talk about it.
Yeah. The way that
It's
he's
the nerd in
like,
him. Yeah.
no, well, it's also like it's his body language and his actual language that gives you complete sense of control in the situation. Where it's like you have someone like Fisk or I don't know, just like any of the other real bosses, and you're like, oh, I have to really worry about this. This is a real situation. And then you're here and you're like, oh, this is a casual thing.
Yeah, it's
This
just
is
Herman. Yeah.
this is one of my BFFs.
I mean, to help drive home Eric's point about, like he kind of treats him like a juvenile. Like when he catches him, it really is just like, all right, take your arm, web it. Like he just kind of straight jackets him,
like
where it's
very low effort. He's just like whatever.
Kind of like when a kid's, like if a kid's throwing a tantrum, how you kind of just like, all right, let's just restrain you. You can't do anything. Just scream it out, and like safely hold him. And that's exactly what he does.
Daily cardio.
It's exactly what he does.
Treats him like a child.
He's just like, all right, let's wrap your arms around here. You can't do anything. All right, just get all the wiggles out.
Now you smell the flowers and you blow out the candles. Like, yeah, it cracks me up. And so you have this nice little chase with Herman, and then you catch him pretty easily, and then you web him up and leave him for the police cops, and you say, all right, there.
You find out, right, that he has new tech, which is from... Yeah, right.
Well,
isn't that related?
Yeah. He says, Spider-Man very wisely deduces that he's like, hey, you were on parole. You wouldn't be doing this unless you were desperate, which means you're probably working for someone. Who is that person? And Shocker's like, I'm not going to tell you. And so Pete just webs him up and he says, all right, bye. I got places to be, because he's got to go to work. So
he's always late for something.
And this time, so he webs up the Shocker very easily, and then he goes to swing off to go talk to Otto. He's got to go to work. Also, I think we forgot to mention in the last episode, Peter goes to like work on some Spider-Man stuff in the lab, and Otto sees him and is like, did we talk about this last time? I don't remember.
I can't remember.
I don't think we did.
We breezed over some story.
Yeah, but so Otto sees Peter working on the Spider-Man suit, and then he's like, oh, of course. And then Otto wisely deduces, well, of course you make the technology for Spider-Man and nothing else. And then Peter's like, yep, that's all I do. And so when you're swinging back to talk to Otto, he's like, hey, did you leave any stuff for your special friend around? Because, people might come over to the lab. And I wanted to ask you guys, do you think that, like, at this point, Otto's not dumb? Do you think that he knows that Peter is Spider-Man and he's starting to plot, and he's playing a little bit dumb? Or do you think that Otto is still genuinely a good guy trying to, like, do good work? Or do you think he's got this plot in the background the whole time? Basically, I'm asking, because we know that he's going to Doc Ock it up later, right? He's going to Dr. Octopus all over the place. Do you think that he started that planning phase now, or is he still just trying to do good work?
I think, and like you can, when you go into the lab, you can usually find like these little like voice recording things around that you can check and hear Otto's voice notes. And I think at this point in the game, he's still, positive, happy Otto. Like, I think that he knows that, Peter is doing more than just building the tech for Spider-Man. But he's playing it.
He's not an idiot, of course.
Right. he's playing it to disarm Peter and to keep that stress because he knows Peter that well. And he's like, he's going to freak out if he thinks I know. So he is just like, well, yeah, like, you're a genius. Of course you design his stuff. And Otto designs the white spider suit, which is something that I love. I adore that they were like, he's like, oh, you have this other hobby. Well, here's some designs that I have for you that you should try out, and they're cool. And I was like, I love that Otto's like, yeah, here's something that helps. Um, but I think that it isn't until something that's about to happen in the game
That's my
that
thought too.
that
Yep.
we start to notice, because like when you listen to those, I listened to a bunch of them the first time, when you go in, and he talks about how much he loves Peter, how brilliant Peter is, how Peter's always late, like things like that, where he's like, where is he? Like,
Perpetually tardy. Yeah.
yeah. And so like you still see that positive side of Otto, um, but it isn't until this kind of catalyst breaking point that I think that's when you start seeing a little bit more resentment show up in these voice notes.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, and this isn't technically confirmed, but I think that at this point, Otto is still a good scientist trying to do good work that really loves Peter Parker. He thinks that he's a great kid, sees a lot of potential in him, and probably knows that he's Spider-Man, but is trying to like let Peter have that secret. Like that's kind of what I think about that. And then what Lundy was kind of referencing, as you go to see Otto, you go to the lab and you see, Otto is trying a prosthetic arm on a military vet who has lost his arm. And so they've got a prosthetic arm that has some kind of neural link and is allowing him to move his fingers, which is very cool. And then as that's happening, a bunch of people burst into the office or into the lab, I guess, and they start taking stuff. Their funding has expired. Otto has violated some safety protocols that, just red tape stuff that he says were dismissed. But then Norman Osborn comes in being a douchebag and is like, well, blah, 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 blah. I'm the mayor. I'm going to shake hands with this veteran and then I'm going to take all your stuff away. Like he just comes an ultimate politician and just being a turd. And yeah, and so I think this is the point that Lundy was talking about. This is the catalyst. I think this is when it switches in Otto's brain where he starts to hatch a plan to like friggin' screw Norman Osborn. I need to do something about him. This is when I think that happens.
Yeah, so what's Norman Osborn's main motivation in shutting down Otto here?
I think it's because he wants control. It's money. It's money. He realizes the financial potential in the work that Otto is doing. And he's like, well, if I let you keep doing this privately, then it can't be under Oscorp's umbrella. He even says as much as he's taking the stuff away. He's just like, you can always continue your work with funding. And then Otto goes, right, at Oscorp. And he goes, smart guy, kind of a thing.
Yeah,
and then
it's a
as he's
control
leaving, he
thing.
also offers Peter a job. So I think it's a control thing and it's a money thing. He wants Otto's work to be under the Oscorp umbrella because Norman likes to be in control and Norman likes money. And the
Well,
work that Otto's doing can be monetized, and he wants Otto and Peter under his thumb.
It,
also wasn't Otto originally the mentor of Norman Osborn
Yeah,
and
they were partners. They formed Oscorp.
partners? Oh,
Yeah,
okay, that's right.
yeah.
yeah, but it really shows, this is the introduction of Norman Osborn in the game, and it lets you know right off the bat that he's a smart scientist and he's a smarter and scummier politician, where he's built this empire on business and now he's become the mayor, and Peter and Otto were working off grants from the city. And so, Norman Osborn was using the city's money, the taxpayers' money, to fund the development of this
He was still
prosthetic.
controlling him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so instead of spending his own corporate money, he's using the
Which he's
taxpayer
got
dollar,
plenty of,
which he's
by
got
the
plenty
way.
of.
Yeah.
But he's using the
Yeah.
taxpayer dollar to develop this technology, and then once it's to the point where it's there, and Otto's even like, you know, this was never about safety or anything like that. He calls him out on it, where it's like, you know, you're shutting us down. Like, we've been pardoned before, and Norman's like, yeah, by me. Like, I'm the one. Now we're shutting it down, and we're gonna take this veteran to Oscorp, and he's gonna get set up with only the finest tech in, all of this. But yeah, he was basically, it shows that he's a corrupt politician because he's using his influence as a politician to benefit his own personal corporation and line his own pockets. And so he's using taxpayer money to fund research for products that he will sell in his private company. And Otto and Peter see through that. They are very much against that. They don't, and Peter's a little conflicted because he's got a personal relationship with Norman. And Otto's
So
fully
does
jaded.
Otto, but Otto's personal
Otto's,
relationship is
yeah,
very negative.
it's yeah.
He hates
I mean,
that guy.
it's beyond. Like they had a close personal relationship, and now it's been severed, and so Otto's just like, you know what,
Oh, I
this
hate
is
that guy.
yeah, like, and so, but like, it's a brilliant way, I think, to introduce that character to show how smart he is and how manipulative he is to come in and say, you know, in a similar way to pull the curtain back and be like, hey, here's the reveal that Peter's boss is actually Dr. Octavius. They do it again where it's like, well, their boss is technically Norman Osborn, and here's all of the ways that he's bad and how they hate him, and now they don't have a job anymore. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's a little bit of a Spider-Man trope that's like the funding has been pulled, execute birth of supervillain. Like, like the scientist working on big science thing, funding gets pulled. Oh no, I'll have to do the tests on myself. Now I'm a supervillain. Like, and which is, pretty much beat for beat what's going to happen here with some extra details thrown in, of course. But yeah.
This is a tangent. I don't need to get too much into it because it becomes a whole rant. But this is an argument that I have had for this whole last year since I had like a startup that kind of went down, and it was about to get new funding, and the with the cap table we have, it was going to get renegotiated, and the current investors were trying to, with this new investment money, negotiate my shares and the common shares down to zero so that they could take all of their preferred shares and get all of the new, like with the new cap table, they were trying to get all of their preferred shares to get all of the new money with their equity. And that's when it's like, obviously I knew this, but this was reinforced where it's like the rules are written such that the 1% or the top 10% or whatever will always be able to protect their wealth and they will always win. The rules are written such that their wealth will be protected, and the bottom, like it's a capital. The capital is preferred over labor, and they will always win. And this is another thing that's like established in this game where it's a class. Like they have this whole class dynamic and this elitism where it's they have Oscorp versus the little guy, and and they show this dynamic with like Peter Parker being part of this lower class, and he's constantly being knocked down. And you show the elitism of Norman Osborn being a mayor and being the head of this corporation and constantly squashing people down. And not, one reason I'm bringing this up is because I just think this is like a funny tangent where my sister is convinced that she's going to be a billionaire one day, and there's fewer than like 7,000 billionaires, and less than 10% of them are self-made, and most of them are like born into the top 1%, and they have a network that like in get them into Ivy League schools, and they have a network that like helps them create their wealth, and it's all this, and she thinks that she can just like create that wealth out of nothing after she's already in her 30s. And I was like, it's just not going to happen. But not only that, my argument is such that the top 1% will never let you become part of the top 1%. They only allow the top 1% to maintain the top 1%. They don't allow people in. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because this is making that argument in this game, Spider-Man, where Otto Octavius is trying to create something that will create wealth, and it will create opportunity, and it will create this fantastic business that will benefit so many. And here comes somebody from the top 1%, and he says, no, I'm from the 1%, and you don't get to have it. I get to have it. I'm crushing it, and I'm taking it from you, and I'm going to absorb it into my 1%. That's my rant. It's the 1% being the 1% and taking it all for themselves. The rules are written to protect it and to absorb it into their own hoard because they are smarter than us. They deserve it more. Their wealth and their influence is equal to their intelligence. They deserve it more. They are better than us.
100, yeah, of course, obviously, that's what's happening. So, yeah, it does a great job at making you
Woof.
hate Norman like right away. He walks in and you just like, oh, I hate this guy. But I want to backpedal just a tiny bit because I was looking at my notes and I missed a very small detail. Before Peter goes to work with Otto, he goes back to Feast for just a minute to take because he gets a mask off of one of the demons at the estate sale. And he's like, oh, you know who knows about these, would know about this? Martin Lee has a degree in like ancient art history. And so he goes back to Feast to talk to Martin Lee about the mask. And what I love about this interaction is Peter shows Martin Lee the mask. He says, where would this have come from? And Martin Lee obviously knows exactly where this mask came from, but he doesn't lie to Peter at all. He gives him the exact correct answer. He says it means demons. And he says, you know, the people who wear these masks might be into some really dangerous stuff. You should stay away from them. And so it shows that, like, even though Martin Lee is going to, you know, maybe become a villain a little bit later on, that he really cares for Peter. And he also cares about doing good. But he has this alter ego side of him that has a different idea of what doing good means. And so I liked that little interaction and conversation a lot because it just shows a lot of Martin Lee's character and his motivations in a very simple way.
One other thing that I thought you were at first going to point out, I think that what you did point out was more important. But
thank you, I'm very smart. Yeah.
Yes, you are. But one of the things, and this kind of reinforces something that we talked about on the last episode with, you know, Peter and his powers and everything kind of being a little bit of a metaphor for ADHD. Right before you go into the office when Norman comes in.
Oh my gosh, yes, I was going to say this too.
In there, and he's like, well, I've got a few minutes before I need to get into work. Let's go check out what's going on in the city. And so you swing around and you do like a crime or, you know, just whatever. And then right as soon as you finish that, Otto calls and is like, Peter. And Peter's like, yeah, what's up? He's like, where are you? He's like, oh my gosh, it was, you know, and like just totally spaces it when 5 seconds before he was like, well, I've got some time before I go into work, and then has completely forgotten already. Like, it's perfect. I love it so much, and it really drives, you know, it reemphasizes the point that you know, we were making last time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I noticed that too. Like, sometimes in between story missions, the game will do this thing where it's like, swing around the city for a minute, do a little side mission or whatever. And so it does that before that. And same thing, cracked me up so much, where he's straight up like minutes before he's like, oh no, I'm late, is like, well, I've got some time. And it's like, no, you don't, man, go to work. Like, just cracked me up. So yes, I think that at the very least, this version of Spider-Man probably has ADHD. I'm seeing the signs. That's like holding up a mirror.
But like, when was ADHD a thing, right? Which version of the DSM was it established? Because like, I don't think they wrote Spider-Man to have ADHD. I think it was just like a thing that existed, and a lot of young men had it, and they're like, well, what's this common thing that we see in young men? Let's write it into this character, Spider-Man. And then it just ended up becoming his personality, and it just like became manifested into his personality and his character abilities. I'm gonna look into that.
Good idea. So I love that part. Cracks me up. And then, do you want to talk about it right now, or because I was getting ready to move on?
It was stuff. Okay. It was in 1902. Okay, so yeah, it's been a hot minute. Okay, so it's been around.
So you get that great interaction, but then you go have all this stuff with Otto and Osborn, and all this stuff happens, and you know, Peter basically, as he's leaving, they're taking all this stuff away. He's like, you know, maybe we can. They didn't take everything. Let's rebuild. We can still do it. And Otto's like, without funding, I can't pay you. You should probably find another job. And so it's devastating because this job that was, you know, just the night before, or just before Peter had been talking about to MJ, and was like, you know, I love what I'm doing. This is so important. And like something that was potentially more important to him than being Spider-Man. And now all of a sudden it's gone. And so it's like, that's hugely devastating for Peter, I'm sure. But then he doesn't get much time to think about it because Shocker is on the loose again, causing trouble. But yeah, do you guys have any thoughts about, you know, Peter losing his job? And I mean, this whole situation. Any last thoughts before we move on to the boss battle with Shocker about Peter losing his job or anything? No? Okay. So I think, and then, so Peter has all this happen. Then you get another call from Yuri that's like, hey, Shocker got out. He's being a butthead again. And he's just like, well, I just barely, come on, guys. Like, what the heck? And so you go over to this bank where Shocker is messing things up. And I love what happens here. You like swing into the bank. Shocker is in one of these big, cartoon vaults that every bank has with like the huge door and the the big like twister wheel to open up the big vault. And so he swings into the bank, and Shocker's in that room, and then he like kicks him farther into the room, and then he closes the door behind him, and he's like, well, we're locked in here. And they're like just doing little shenanigans with Shocker, and just like, well, what are we gonna do? And then Shocker just like punches him through this like huge, I don't know, like 2 foot thick steel gate, and I was like, that probably would hurt a lot more than it looked like it did in the game, because it's not Shocker doesn't punch the vault door. He punches Spider-Man, and then Spider-Man hits the vault door, and then that's enough force to throw the door open and like blast it off its hinges. Is like, he got hit pretty hard there.
I messed up the order. I thought that you only encountered Shocker once in this sequence. This is the second time in the whole sequence.
Yeah,
so
you
this is
him.
the technology. This is the part where we encounter the new technology.
Yeah, and then this is where you battle him again in the bank, and
my bad.
Throw the chandelier down on top of him and all that stuff.
Okay. Well, I keep screwing up.
You could have said nothing and you wouldn't have noticed. You can get this part if you want. No one, like, I don't think you said anything that was specific to the bank part.
I said something about new technology in the last time we were talking about Shocker.
Well, that doesn't matter.
People are going to be furious.
They're going to be so mad at Shan.
We're going to get the typical 0 comments.
We're going to, like, 1 or 2 people are going to be super upset about that.
Yeah.
But I like this boss battle. It's a good Herman boss battle, I think, because it's not overly complicated and it's not super hard, but it's bombastic and fun and explosive. And you have some really nice particle effects going on. I like the shockwave effect on the floor. And so it's a fun boss battle. It's a nice high octane Spider-Man moment where you get to just mess up the inside of a bank. So, yeah.
I like that, while you're fighting him, Spider-Man's talking to him and is like, look, you're scared. Like, there's something that's actually rattled him. And, on the way there, Yuri lets you know that, a guard let him out and the guard is dead because, according to the security footage, it looks like his eyes were glowing and then the guard just let him out of his cell and then killed himself to tie up that loose end. And so it starts to kind of build a little bit of mystery here, and Spider-Man's like, hey, who are you working for? Like, we talked about this before, but really tell me this time. And Shocker's like, nobody can protect me from these guys. Like, he's really freaked out about it.
But then in typical Shocker fashion, like an idiot, he slips up and he says, I couldn't even tell you if I wanted to. I couldn't tell who they were through those masks. And then Spider-Man's like, oh, masks, you say? Like, just like, Shocker is so dumb, you guys. He's just a dumb dummy. And during this boss battle, one of my favorite moments in the whole game happens, where it's like it's kind of like in between boss phases where you're about halfway through the battle and it plays a little cutscene. There's a part where Spider-Man is like on one side of the room and he webs up Shocker's feet and then he like jumps to the other side of the room, and it like makes Shocker like flop on his back very slowly over backwards, where he's just like whoop, flop, and he like pulls his feet over, and it just looks like he looks like a toddler trying to stand up. It just really drives home this point of like, this guy is incompetent, and it's no wonder Spider-Man doesn't take him seriously. And just go back and watch like the Shocker fight there, and you'll see there's the one part that I'm talking about where he just like slowly flips him over, and Shocker's like, whoa, I can't get up. And it's just, it cracks me up every time.
I've fallen and I can't get up.
I'm disabled. It's just so perfectly Shocker. I love it. So yeah, you get the hint that Shocker is working for the demons, and then you web him up real good, without much effort because Shocker. And then you get another tip that you need to go to the shipping yard to check out some weapons. Some demons have been hitting Fisk's old weapon caches around the city, and you have a tip that something like that might be going on at a different Fisk weapon facility place, whatever. And so you go there to go check it out, and then when you get there, you meet Jefferson Davis. Yay, Jefferson Davis. We love Jefferson Davis. For those of you Spider-Man fans, know Jefferson Davis is Miles Morales' dad, which I guess, spoiler alert, because at this point in the game, you don't know that unless you are, of course, also already a Spider-Man fan. But I like this part. It's super fun to kind of work with like a policeman, because you work with Yuri a lot, but you get to like, you're like in the same space with directly working with Jefferson, which is fun.
Is his full name Jefferson Davis Morales, or what's going on with his name?
It's so he marries, his wife's name is Rio Morales, and then Miles takes his mom's last name when he's born. So,
okay, not confusing at all.
Yeah, it could have been like they could have hyphenated. It could have been Miles Davis Morales, but it's a lot of names.
Okay,
yeah.
All right.
And that doesn't have that all important comic book alliteration. So
yeah. Super progressive. Nice.
Yeah.
All right.
So
well.
yeah, this part's fun. You get to kind of go into the shipping yard. It's like some light puzzling. You're figuring, finding their old bootleg tunnel hidden weapon caches and stuff, and you're trying to kind of figure out what Kingpin has going on here. And then when you find the weapon cache, you see that the demons have somehow beat you to it, and they've already taken the weapons. And so you go to leave, and then are bushwhacked by a bunch of demons. And you get to fight them off with Mr. Davis.
I just barely watched Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Great movie.
Not seek the treasure. It's bushwhacked.
It's bushwhacked. It's such a great movie.
It's so good.
It's a perfect movie.
Let's do a whole extra episode just talking about how much we love Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Oh, I absolutely could. I could do a whole episode just talking about the soundtrack for that movie.
That's great.
Oh, yeah.
It's so
Without warning, at any moment of any day, the Big Rock Candy Mountain song will get stuck in my head. I'll just be like sitting there doing the dishes and like, and the Big Rock Candy Mountain. How did what? Like, where did you come from? So
it's amazing.
So yes, they get bushwhacked, much like Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? They get bushwhacked by a bunch of demons,
just like the treasure.
Just like the treasure, yeah. and so you get to fight off a bunch of demons with Jefferson, and Jefferson is kind of a badass. He like, he's holding his own while you're fighting some demons. Some of them escape in a car, and then like you are in a situation where you're trying to stop a semi truck that's gone off the street into like a subway track, and you're pulling it up, and then the demon's truck is about to come and hit you, and then Jefferson comes in with a police car and like slams into it, and then like punches this like the dude as he's trying to get out of the car, and like takes the gun from another one. I was like, heck yeah, man, this dude's freaking killing it. So he's super cool. Immediately establishes him as like this, he's very good at his job. He's a very competent police officer. He's not to be trifled with. And he also mentions his son a couple times, which is like a fun little Easter egg for those of you who are listening.
Can't imagine what that's setting up.
Yeah. What could it be? So I don't know. Do you guys have any favorite like parts with this segment with Jefferson?
Yeah, they immediately establish him as like a stoic and endearing and lovable character. And I always wonder, it's like, how do you nail the delivery of a character such as to make him lovable or her lovable? And usually you do like a save the cat thing, but he immediately hits the ground with like a lot of charisma. And how do you write that in an authentic way? And I don't know, like in any attempt to write in any attempt to write authenticity, it sounds inauthentic. I don't know how you do that.
I think what makes this one work is that he immediately shows up providing value for Spider-Man. Like, because Spider-Man's waiting for him, and he walks up and he mentions, like, hey, like, I think it might be Spider-Man. Breaking and entering. Yeah. And he's like, yeah, well, probably wouldn't go so great. That's why I brought a warrant. And it's like, oh, cool, we can do this legally. And then Spider-Man has to crawl in there, and he's like, well, I can't find a way to get the door open. And Jefferson Davis is like, well, here's my taser. Spider-Man's like, oh, sweet, I get to make this into electric webs. And so before like he's even in there working with you, he's already provided value twice. And, he's teaching Peter, hey, look for where the scrape marks are on the floor. That's how you can tell where hidden bootleg doors are. And like it shows that he's qualified. It shows his experience in believable ways to be like, yeah, he knows what to look for because he's a cop and he's a good cop. Like he's really good at his job. And so he's giving pointers to Spider-Man. When they go up to that second level, there's kind of a gap that they have to cross, and he just runs and jumps over it himself. Spider-Man's
Which
like,
it's
wow.
not a small gap. That's a big jump. Like it's
And
not a small jump.
Spider-Man's like, wow,
Yeah.
stuck the landing. Like, it several times in a short amount of time shows that he's providing value in ways
Yeah.
that are pretty meaningful, but then really drives it home during that demon fight where it's like, and here he is
Literally
providing
drives it home.
value again because he's tasing these demons and actually like helping you, because there's every time I always turn to punch somebody and they're already shocked, and it's like, oh sweet, they're stunned. I don't even have to like worry about whatever else I'm doing. Like I don't have to dodge that guy because he's taken care of all of them. Like, so they bring him to the scene and immediately just it's
Yeah.
he's earning his keep the whole time he's
Yeah,
there. He's
so-
not there just to fill in space or take up oxygen. He is contributing to the story and the mission the entire time.
So you're right, and to put it in another way, it's a companion mission, and it's a very tight positive feedback loop. And he's never doing anything to cause a negative feedback loop. He's never done anything to get in your way, and he's never slowed you down. So everything is just propelling you forward. But not only that, I think it's just really subtle but fantastic one-liners and just great acting.
Yes.
So there's a lot of charm in his delivery. It's comedic, it's tight, it's fun, and he has a lot of chemistry with Peter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They've got a really good back and forth and go. And it's important too that it's not like too funny. He's not like a comic relief character.
It's restrained, yeah.
It's a restrained. It's it's nice. He's just comes in immediately charming and very likable character from the jump. Yeah.
Yeah, and just like very well constructed mechanics in battle, as you were saying, Lundy, such that it's like, oh, I very rarely have this much help in battle from an AI companion. And so I love his character.
Yeah, except for that one time in The Last of Us Part 2 where Joel is helping out Abby like fight those clickers at the very, very beginning of the game. And I couldn't get a shot in because Joel was already killing everything. So slightly less proficient than an AI Joel, but still very helpful.
Yeah. That's right.
So yeah, very cool sequence. It ends with you see that Jefferson kind of comes in and saves the day, saves Spidey by slamming his car into that truck that's about to hit him, and then takes care of the demons while Spidey's able to pull the truck back up. And so they make a good team. They were able to stop the demons and stop them from stealing more of Fisk's weapons, which is a good thing. And you see that later in the game that this is going to be a good thing for Jefferson. It's, well, sort of. And he actually, like, the next morning, you see that MJ has written, like, a story about him, and you like can look at it on your phone, I think, or I don't remember exactly what happens. He gets a call or a text message or something, but I'm getting ahead of myself. But so you do this great mission with Jefferson, and then Spider-Man's like, man, I have to go sleep. I can't believe it's been like, I haven't slept since the Fisk, takedown, which has been like, it was the morning of the previous day. So he's been up for a whole 24 hours plus like up until that evening. And so what's that, like 36-ish hours, something like that? Like he's been awake for a very long time. So he goes back to his apartment to go to sleep, and his door is locked and all of his stuff is gone. He's been evicted because he can't make his rent. So huge bummer. Poor Peter.
Do you remember as a kid pulling your first all-nighter and being so proud of yourself, at being so capable? And now I've gotten this last week a couple like 5 to 6 hour nights, and I want to murder myself because I'm so miserable. It's like, if I ever have another all-nighter, I might go on a murder spree. I think I would actually kill people.
Yeah. Fun fact, once you hit 30, if you try to do an all-nighter, you just die. Like you You, instead of going to sleep, you go to dead sleep. Yeah.
Yeah. The last time I pulled an all nighter in adulthood, it was before 30. I'm fairly confident.
Well, yeah, because if it
Um,
was after, you'd be dead.
I'd be dead. But me and a group of my friends, we have an annual extended Lord of the Rings marathon
Oh
where,
yeah,
it's,
you have to wake up so early.
well, like we get it,
They're like
you know,
4 hours each.
Well,
Yeah,
I
it's
yeah,
the
did
whole
like
I
day.
did the
Yeah.
12
I
and a
did the
half.
Hobbit
And so,
and I did
yeah,
Lord of the
so
Rings.
we
Yeah,
did that.
In one day?
that
Oh
day's
my
hard.
gosh.
Yeah,
It's just about 24 hours of movie.
it's like
And
just 23 or something.
yeah, and
That's too
so,
much.
but because we had this annual tradition and we'd always start it usually like at noon and then go till midnight, we were like, well, for anybody that doesn't want to watch the Hobbit trilogy, because any reasonable person should fall in that camp, um, we were
But
like,
we are not reasonable
no,
people.
we were like, most people won't want to watch this and they shouldn't want to watch it anyway. But we were like, we'll start it at midnight so that we can watch those. So we planned a midnight to midnight. But that meant that we were up the entire day getting ready for everything and then started at midnight and watched through. That was, and we finished it and we were like, man, that was hard. But starting it at midnight when we'd been up the entire day. And so we decided to do it again the next year just to try, like, see how, so we went noon to noon to make it a little bit easier, because then it's like, well, yeah, when it's noon and then we can go to bed at like 6 and we're not up for nearly as long. So did that marathon twice and never again.
Yeah,
Sounds
Like,
horrible.
did it once. It is very hard. Do you call it going there and back again?
No, so our annual thing, we call it Annumem, which
Oh,
it's an anagram. Like, so it started out because we did it every year. We started doing it on New Year's Eve, so it was annual New Year's Eve Middle Earth
it's
Marathon.
best at the end of the year
And
because that's when you get everybody at this to be
yeah,
able to sync up your schedule.
so that's what we had initially done. ANYEMEM, annual New Year's Eve Middle Earth Marathon. But then
Oh,
college football had kind of reconfigured itself and put a bunch of really important games on New Year's Eve. And me being the college football nut that I am, I was like, okay, guys, let's. So we moved it one day earlier and changed the E to an A and called it the annual New Year's Adam Middle Earth Marathon. Because Adam comes before Eve. Anyway, so Annumem, same word, slightly different spelling, but then scheduling and everything just kept getting weird, and so now we've moved it to right after New Year's, and now we call it the annual New Year's Advent Middle Earth Marathon, because it's at the beginning
You
of
got to keep the acronym or it
yeah
doesn't work.
yeah right, like, and we yeah, like, so everybody knows, our whole group, it's like, hey, when are we doing Annumem this year, or like, it's become a holiday to us.
yeah.
But yeah, so we did 2 years of Annumem that were the 24 hours, and ever since then we've been like,
It sounds awful.
we can't do this ever again. Like, we've for a few years after that, there's a fan edit of The Hobbit that's 4 hours, and it only follows the book, because
Is it the Topher Grace one?
he did one that I think is like 2 hours.
I would
there's
definitely prefer it to be shorter because the fluff in there is
Yeah.
not great.
the 4 hour one took like the 3 extended versions, and it's like, okay, let's cut all the stuff that wasn't in the books, and like, let's cut some stuff that doesn't work. And like, I actually like that 4 hour fan edit. It
I'd
works.
watch that.
It works pretty well, but it's not good enough to justify including it every single year. So we were like, you know what, we're done. And so, though we might start including, we'll see, but the latest Lord of the Rings movie that just came out back in December, the War
Oh,
of the
that's right. They did an
Rohirrim,
anime one.
The
I haven't watched
Rohirrim,
that
right.
one yet.
I really enjoyed it. It's
Oh,
not
okay.
it's not perfect, and I was actually very surprised afterwards to find out that apparently they rushed the movie. Like, they really, like, just pushed like, they had really harsh deadlines and stuff. They just wanted to get it out into theaters because it was one of those, they need a theatrical release to keep the rights, and so they just
One of those.
they
Okay.
did a really rushed project. And I was like, I honestly couldn't tell. Like, there are times where the animation looks a little bit like weird, but that's partially because it's an anime where, like, the characters are 2D, but they wanted like 3D kind of camera movement, and so the the landscape
Yeah.
is CGI, and like that makes it look a little bit wonky. But overall, I thought it was better than any of the Hobbit movies, and you know,
That's
Low
not
bar.
hard. Yeah.
yeah, like
Yeah.
it's better than Rings of Power. It's so like it was
Rings
like
of
I was
Power's
like
okay.
I yeah, like I mean these aren't high bars, I understand, but
I
like
think Rings of Power is pretty good. I'm okay with the departure from lore. I,
I have
I'm
some,
not as much of a purist.
yeah, there's things about I will before we get back on topic. Rings of Power gets a lot
No, you
more.
guys go ahead. I'm gonna take a nap real quick.
Rings of
I'm
Power,
okay with
yeah,
cutting some of this out.
Rings of Power gets a lot more right than it gets wrong, but the things that it gets wrong are really big.
Okay.
And
I mean,
so
the movies do a lot of big things wrong too.
not the same. Like very
Okay.
different. Like I mean, The Hobbit. Yeah, The Hobbit gets a lot of big things wrong, but the movies
Like the
change
plot.
things that serve the overall purpose. And there are things in Rings of Power that make me question if the showrunners and writers have read the source material.
Well, they didn't have access to all of the source material
Right,
such that they had to change
right,
things.
right, right. Well, they didn't have to. There's enough like based off of what they're taking from the appendices of Lord of the Rings. There are things that they could have omitted, and it would have still made sense, and they actively chose to change it anyway.
Okay.
Um, so like, yeah, there's a lot of things that like I do think they get a lot more right than they get wrong. Like I grade that series overall a C plus. Like it's passable, but it really did a lot of damage to itself, like that unnecessarily. Um, but yeah, so like I have very mixed feelings on it. I liked season 2 a lot more than season 1, but
Okay.
yeah, we can talk more
I
about that later.
Yeah, we'll talk about it later. I'm loving Galadriel. She's keeping me in
I
it.
I think that she was like that casting was phenomenal.
Nope,
Like
perfect.
it
Pitch
was
perfect, I mean. But yeah.
so incredible casting. Some of the writing is a bit weird for me, but she is knocking it out of the park. She's nailing it out of the park.
Yeah.
Um,
There it
yeah,
is.
Any
she's
All
opportunity we
right.
can to make fun of Tucker mispronouncing things.
All right, let's bring it back.
All right, bring
Where
it
were
back in.
we?
Bring it back into Spider-Man. So Spider-Man, Peter has just been evicted. Is that where we stopped on? I think that's where we stopped
yeah.
on. Yeah. So Peter has just been. Oh, because we were talking about all-nighters. That's right. So Peter has just been evicted, and then he goes out a swinging about, and he's like, "Well, I have to go find my stuff." He says, "I don't care if I lose everything as long as I get back my spider flash drive." So he's got a Spider-Man flash drive somewhere in the garbage that he needs to go get, and he goes out to the dumpster, and it's not there. He has to call the garbage dump people and be like, "Hey man, where are my stuff?" And fun fact, the guy on the other line is a guy named Eddie. Maybe a cheeky little nod to one Eddie Brock, who in the comics and some other media is Venom. But so
Is he a dumpster truck
no, I mean
driver?
I don't think so. But his name's Eddie.
Lots
It's
of
an
people are
Easter
named
egg. Shut
Eddie.
up. Yeah. It's a perfect Easter egg. The other option is that it's secretly Chandler's roommate from Friends. That one guy he lives with when Joey. Never mind. That's not an unimportant tangent, but
All right.
we can cut this. That's fine.
Nope, this is staying in. I'm
Any
not
making
paying the
really
editor to take
Eric
this out.
making really stupid obscure Friends references. Anyways, so Peter's talking on the phone with a lovely gentleman named Eddie, being like, "Yo, Eddie, where's my garbage?" And
This could
Eddie
be a
sends him,
reference to Ed, Ed, and Eddie, the
yeah,
1990s Cartoon Network
obviously
show.
that's what it
I
is. It's a
love that show
reference to
so
Ed and Eddie.
much.
Everybody loves that show. It's amazing.
All
So
right.
Eddie sends Peter on a wild goose chase, and finally Peter finds his flash drive in the garbage after beating up some thugs who are trying to rob a garbage person. Because sometimes you see a garbage truck and you're like, I gotta rob that guy.
Well, I mean, one man's trash is another man's treasure. Like it makes sense. They're on a
Very
treasure hunt.
literally in this case.
Have
These
you
burglars are
seen
like,
It's
I
Always
gotta
Sunny?
burgle that
Because
guy.
there's an amazing episode about dumpster diving and going to the dump to be able to find treasures.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic. I think they find a scimitar or some kind. Like it's a fantastic episode. They find so
Treasures.
many treasures.
Yeah, I have seen some of Always Sunny. I haven't seen that episode.
Okay. Worth a watch. Yeah.
Lundy was just excited to jump on a movie or a TV show reference that Shan made. He's like, I did watch that one. I don't watch The Office or Parks and Rec, but I've
I
seen
have
It's
seen
Always
parts
Sunny.
of something that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
Not that one.
What's the
Not that
Captain America
episode.
thing? I got that reference. Yeah.
I understood that reference.
So so that's just nothing super crazy important happens there except for he recovers his spider drive. He gets the web grenades from some stuff on his spider drive, which is fun. And then he starts swinging around and having a little inner conversation with himself about like, well, where am I going to stay tonight? What am I supposed to do? And so he's like, well, maybe...
I love that he goes to Mary Jane before he goes to Aunt May. I was like, in my whole head, I was like, go to Aunt May.
Well, it's like, I mean, in this situation, like, she's Aunt May, right? But Aunt May is basically Peter's mom. Not basically. Aunt May is Peter's mom. And for anyone who has a mom, when you're in trouble, you're like, where do you go? You go to your mom. And so, I think that's really interesting that they chose that. And I think the reason they did that is because Peter has a huge desire to reconnect with Mary Jane. And he's like,
that's what I'm thinking.
Ooh, maybe this is opportunity a knockin'.
As a single man who, like I can, like, every time I play, like, this is one of the parts of the game that I relate with the most, because it's like I can see myself being like, well, maybe she'd let me in and like sleep on her couch or something, like maybe there's a little bit of smooching beforehand, like, something, just like just the wishful
I'm a desperate,
thinking,
lonely man.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll let me in.
Yeah, like just the absolute diluted
story.
Like the wishful thinking, like knowing that it's not realistic, but like that level of wishful thinking is something that I relate to at my core, where it's like, I'm going to try, I know that like this is a 1 in a million chance, but I'm going to try this first. Just in case. Just
because
in case I win the lottery.
Sad enough. I'm a sad puppy.
Yeah.
Well, and in this case, Peter is literally homeless. And he's like, oh, I'm so homeless. Will you please let me sleep on your couch and maybe we can make out if you want to?
Lady, will you let me in? You're my only hope.
Yeah. So Peter, and he has this adorable thing where he's swinging around and he's trying to kind of psych himself up like, hey, Mary Jane, can I stay at your... Oh, that's too casual. And he's just like, yo, MJ, what if I... No, that's too... Like, he's trying to, like, practicing in his head, like, what he's going to say to her, and he's trying to psych himself up, and but then he gets to MJ's house, and he sees the article about Jefferson Davis, which is what I was talking about earlier, but he sees the article about Jefferson Davis, and then as soon as he gets, like, a realistic out, he talks himself out of it again. He's like, she's probably busy with work, which is, like, a classic, like... I don't know about everybody, but it's like for me when I was dating and stuff, you work up the confidence and you're like, yeah, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go talk to him. But then as soon as like a pebble gets thrown in your path, you're like, oh, no, I'm not going to. And you like lose your nerve. And so this is Peter's lose his nerve moment. He's like, no, she's probably busy. I'll go see if May can, what May's doing.
It's funny too, because it's like, oh, she's probably busy with work. It's like, dude, she just published her work. She's literally done with it.
Yeah. She just finished her work.
She is 100% done. That's what publishing an article is. Like,
and you can schedule those.
Yeah, like, and so, but it's just one of those things that, yeah, like it's funny. And again, to me, super related. Just the whole like, okay, I've got to rehearse this a million times in my head so I can get it just right, and then actually, I'm not going to do it. Like, just the whole thing speaks to Lundy's soul.
Yeah. You're given one reason to be scared, so you took it.
Yep.
Yeah, I get that.
So he decides to go and see what Aunt May is doing. He calls Aunt May and he says, hey, lets it slip that like, oh, our funding got pulled today. I think I lost my job and also I got evicted. And then May immediately is like, dude, literally like yesterday I asked if you needed help and you said no. Like, she's like, Peter, come on, man. Like, well, of course you can come stay with me. Please let me know if you need help. Like, just, and I love Aunt May in this game. She's just
so good.
She's like the perfect mom towards Peter, where it's just this like, please, like, all I want to do in my life is help you, but I can't help you unless you ask for help. And so it's like, it's like, please, yeah, of course, come stay on the couch in my office is comfy. Please let me know when you need help so that I can help you.
All right, so I wanted to dig into this. Do you have an Aunt May in your life? And do you have a Peter Parker problem in your life?
My mom was always my Aunt May, and
Yeah.
I don't have to talk about that too much, but my mom was a very caring, loving person, and always, I'm one of five kids, and she's always was very concerned about taking care of her kids and making sure that we had what we needed when we were kids and when we were adults. Some of my siblings and myself have not always had super easy times as adults, and so just this whole like, I want to help you, please let me help you kind of a thing is something that my mom was always doing. And so I feel kind of a kinship towards Peter, and so watching his interactions with Aunt May remind me a lot of my interactions with my mom, and so I see a lot of that. And even when Peter gets to Aunt May's office, he says, "If everyone had a mom like May, the world would be a better place, or like we'd have less problems, or something like that." And I love that line because it illustrates a couple of things. Is that Peter notices the value and the good things that May does for him. A lot of teenagers and young adults, they have wonderful parents who try to do wonderful things and they just kind of brush it off like as whatever. But Peter is a good person, and he sees that. He's like, May loves me and she's such a good person and she does good things. And also it shows that he says everyone should have a mom like May, which shows that Peter, even though he calls her May, he calls her Aunt May because that's what she is to him. Like, Peter's like, this is my mom. Aunt May is my mom. And so I love their relationship throughout this game because it reminds me a lot of my mom.
Yeah, my I had an aunt who was always you know, very gracious and giving and selfless, and she was that for everybody. I think I have like 19 cousins or something like that, and she, having never been married, was that for everyone. And uh, you know, and she just passed away just over a year ago, and left something for everyone. And everybody could rely on her to uh, take care of them, and to, like, when we were kids, she would take us out right before school to get supplies, because I come from a lower middle class, um, extended, like my extended family, all of us were lower middle class in our upbringing. Some of us broke out of that. Some of us went into lower class than that, and just like there were just really real struggles because there was generational poverty or close to that. And so she found stability, and she was able to leverage that into taking care of people. And there was a lot of selflessness in that. And the only other person that there was similarity in that is my mom. And I found that she had an equal amount of that. So I was lucky enough to find that an Aunt May twice in my life. And so even though my aunt has passed, and the reason I focused on her first is because she passed, and that was the hardest thing I've suffered through in my life recently. I still have that, and it's my mom, and she is trying to focus on taking care of everybody around her now and to carry the torch in a consolidated way. But I've been fortuitous enough to never have to rely or ask for help, because I have been lucky enough to live that American dream where I have had greater success in my life than my parents so far. And I have had a more successful career such that I am gaining momentum and I can take care of myself. And I've never had to reach back to take from them to propel myself forward. So right now, I'm trying to look for ways that I can be a sort of Aunt May to them, to lift them up, because they've had financial struggles as they've taken care of others, and it's pulled them down. And so that's the struggle I'm going through right now. Just found out today that my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer, but it's minor, but aggressive, and I think they can just take it out and it won't be a mastectomy at this point. That's what it looks like. But and then my dad has he just found out he has early kidney failure that he can slow down, but and it's just a common thing that, but like these are just like early milestones of age that that just remind you that it's your turn to step up to the plate and be somebody who takes care of other people. And you is you have to grow up and you have to be that person for someone else, and you have to flip the script and you have to be your it's a paradigm shift, right? It's a role reversal. You can't have like an older person take care of you. You have to be that for your parents. But I don't know, like I love Aunt May's situation here, that she has that opportunity to be that for Peter, but sometimes you have to know that you have that responsibility and you have to do it for somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to your other question that you had asked, like if we have our own kind of Peter Parker, like just refusal to ask for help kind of situation, like I think they did a good job really showcasing his mentality and like why he's that. When you show up to feast, I don't think I'd ever noticed this before, but like when you're walking up the stairs, there's I forget her name, but she's a character that you saved from mugging like really early in the game and told, hey, go check out Feast.
Oh yeah,
And she
yeah,
did.
yeah.
But, like you go walking in and you can hear her say like, hey, you're here pretty late or something like that. And if you go over, you can actually talk to her. It's totally optional dialogue. She says something to the effect of like, oh, I recognize the look on your face or something, you didn't ever think you'd end up here, did you? And he's like, well, I just like I'm grateful, but I just don't want to be taking up resources that other people need. And she has to remind him, she's like, you need that right now, like, because Peter's like, yeah, I got evicted, and she's like, you need these resources, like these resources are for people like you are the people, like,
You are homeless. This
yeah,
is a homeless center. Like
you're not
That's a
taking,
good point.
like you're not taking this from somebody else that needs it more, because right now you are the person that this is meant for. Like, this is for you. You fit this. You shouldn't feel bad taking it. Like, just take it. Like, this is yours. And it's like kind of, and he's like, you're right. Like it is kind of a wake up call to him, where he's like, and it's just true to who Peter is, where it's like he feels responsible, and so he's like, well, I got to take care of everybody else, and I can't take care of me because everybody else needs it more, and he feels like he's a
it's
burden.
that Parker pride.
Yeah, he feels like he's a burden, even though he's not. He's taking things on, like, and I mean, I feel like I do. I think that a lot of people do that, to some extent. But like I've been there before, where back I used to. I've mentioned it before on here that I used to work in sports radio. I was chasing that dream. And what a lot of people I don't think know is that radio doesn't pay very much money. And so, like
I took a radio broadcasting class in college, and I was like, wait a second, I should probably switch immediately out
yeah,
of this.
there's very little money in it. You have to really grind. Like, the hours are inconvenient, and I worked in it for 4.5 years ish, and was still considered only a part-time employee even when I was putting in full-time hours. So I didn't get health insurance benefits or anything like that. So I had a full-time side gig to try to make ends meet as well. And I was just, I was kind of in a Peter Parker situation, where it's like, I've got multiple jobs. I've got, at the time, like, my dad had just been diagnosed with Lewy body dementia. So I was kind of what you were talking about, Shan, like trying to step up and become that caretaker in, my parents' lives, and like help out my mom with caring for my dad, and also help out my mom in caring for herself, because she was so burnt out from trying to care for my dad and all of that kind of stuff. Plus I was trying to date, keep relationships alive and things like that, which, still single in my mid 30s in Utah, so obviously not very successful in that aspect. But like just a
Which
lot
is
of,
insane because Lundy is a delightful person.
I mean,
So all of our female listeners, Lundy is single. Why don't you hit him up? Slide into his
Uh,
DMs.
there we go. But
Specifically on Spotify, where we weirdly have more females than males
Yeah,
listening.
so if you like the
interesting.
sound of Lundy's voice, which of course you
The
do
dulcet
because,
tones.
listen to it,
Um,
you hit him up. Lundy
but
would love to go on a date with all of you individually.
As long as you're over 18,
Yeah. Yes, of
because I
course,
know
yes.
at least one of you
well,
aren't.
over 25. That's my age cutoff. Like, got to be
Okay, okay.
25 or older.
This is the man
Like,
of standards. You hear
yeah,
that, ladies?
Yeah.
if you're still on your parents' health insurance, that's probably a no go.
24 and a half, no dice.
No dice. But yeah, like it was a lot of that stuff going on. Like just couldn't keep. And like eventually I did have a nervous breakdown, and like I ended up quitting radio over it and all of that. But like worked with a therapist really well. Like the therapist has kind of provided a little bit of that Aunt May for me, but my mom more so, a lot more so. But like I do think that I've been in that situation, where like I do relate to Peter in that sense, because there was so much of it that was like I need to help other people. My family's got all this going on. My sister was going through a divorce at the time, and so like there were a lot of people that it's like I need to be there because I'm part of their support system. And I also have to support myself, and I can't ask for support because I don't know why. Like I just, like you just don't feel like you can if you like. There's something about being a support to somebody else that makes you feel like you can't ask for that support back, because when you are supporting somebody, if you ask for support, it feels like you're failing in your duty as a supporter.
Or you're draining the resources you're supposed to be giving them.
Yeah, exactly. And
So
so
you're
like
taking,
in my own life,
which
like
is what Peter is feeling 100%. Yeah.
totally, yeah. And so like I think that there is, for a lot of us, like I think that's one of the things that makes Spider-Man such a cool and relatable character, is that a lot of us do have that self-destructive habit of being like, I am really good at being there for people, but I can't possibly inconvenience anybody by asking them to be there for me. Like, that like we all want to be selfless and giving and supportive, but the second we need help, we feel selfish for asking for it. And Spider-Man is just that's him to a T. Like he does everything for the set
to 11. Yeah.
Like he does everything for the city and asks for nothing back. And it's just one more reason that Spider-Man is one of the most relatable characters in all of fiction.
Yeah, I realize I don't remember the last time I asked for help, and I'm starting to realize I'm Peter Parker more than I realize, and I could probably get farther if I asked for help. And uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Jeez, I'm not evicted, so it's like I'm not falling behind because I'm not asking, but I'm realizing that I could get farther ahead if I did ask. So that could still be a problem, just in disguise.
Yeah.
I wanted to pose this other question. I don't want to like call out siblings if this is part of the problem, but like because there's a corollary to this question. What is the line in asking too much of these people, right? Because we might know people that like have no compunction with asking for help from people, and then they take it too far and they ask too much of people that are gracious and are willing to give because they are very nice people, and they just get drained from people that love asking from them.
Yeah, I mean, I won't say names or anything, but I've had friends in the past, particularly it was a mutual friend with my wife and I, and this person, it was more of an emotional help. They always needed emotional help. And so it was really hard to continue being friends with this person, like in an actual friend sort of a way, because they needed so much constant attention and validation and care for their emotional well-being that it was hard for us, particularly Liz, to be able to focus on anything else or do anything else. And so at a certain point it had to be like, hey, I love you and I want to be there for you, but like I'm not a professional therapist. You need to find someone else that you can talk to about this, because I don't know how to help and it's making my life miserable. So like, I love you and I want you to get help, but I can't be that person that helps you in this way because I don't know how. And so that was something for us.
Yeah, I think that, like, and you illustrated the point, that I want to, like, you showed it in practice, but, like a lot of people, if they come to you asking for a fish, are you giving them a fish or are you teaching them how to fish, right? Like,
Hmm.
and it also depends on the context of their lives because, like maybe right now that, it's just a one-time thing, like they already know how to fish, but they just, whatever, they can't get down to the river. It's just like, hey, I need something, yeah, sure, this is a one-time quick thing, but like sometimes the best help that you can give somebody is teaching them how to help themselves. Like Eric said, hey, I'm not a professional. You should talk to a professional about this, right? Helping them come to that realization that like, I want to help, but what I'm going to give you isn't going to be beneficial to you. Like, go to this source. Like,
Yeah, it's not
you
going to
know,
help you and it's going to drain me. It's not going
yeah,
to do any good for anyone. Like
yeah,
you need to find someone else who knows what to do here.
yeah. So like, being able to point that out, I think, and sure, maybe it might be a little harsh, at the time they might be like, oh, well, sorry, I thought like, but I really do think that, helping somebody realize the best source to get help is still helping them. It doesn't have to, like, this is something that my mom, her Aunt May side, tries to get her to help too much with people, and it's like, hey, like the best way for you to help other people at times is to help yourself. You need to like take back, sit back, recharge, let other people take care of things, like, and yeah, I'm kind of rambling now, but like, the point is that, some people will keep asking for help because they might still need it. But like, just because they're asking you for help doesn't mean that you have to be the provider for everything. You can still redirect them somewhere, better than what you're able to offer them. And that benefits both of you more than what the original arrangement was.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen helpers and caregivers, and I have identified myself as one at times, or I or maybe I'm just the archetype generally, but I'm kind of selective in how I engage with that, with the kind of person that I do that to. But like identify that and then know how to set boundaries, and what your stops are so that people don't take advantage of you, because I have noticed that if I don't put limits on it, I can become resentful of the people that don't know how to stop asking. And so I don't know, that's just some advice on that. I don't know, like that could look contextually different for everybody on what is the line and how you establish that. But like I've seen, you know, my mom and my aunt be taken advantage of because they are too generous, and it has hurt them emotionally to know they are being taken advantage of, but they can't say no, and they didn't know how to put stops on it, and that hurts me to watch from a distance.
Yeah, it's a hard, I mean, and it's a hard situation to navigate because it's different for every person that needs help and it's different for every person who's willing to provide that help. And you have to find the right balance of, yeah, I think setting boundaries. These are the stops, these are the rules, you
Set
know,
boundaries
and
before
we have,
you
yeah,
engage
before,
in your generosity.
and we have
Otherwise,
to
you're
stay with,
emotionally invested in helping.
yeah, and we have to stay within that, or we just have to stay within that. That's what it is. No, I think that's
Mhm.
smart. And I mean, I've had like parental figures, excuse me, help me with stuff like that. And like, I remember like a little thing, my car broke down and I didn't have enough money to pay for it. And I needed like a little bit of help from my dad. And my dad like wrote, like typed up a contract and made me sign it and was like, I'll pay you back this much by this date. And I did. Which
Uh-huh.
is like, and that was smart of him to do. Cause it like, I was like, that was, I mean, I was like I don't know, I was in my early 20s or something. I was kind of a kid drifting a little bit. And I was
Hmm.
like, yeah, of course, you're not just going to give me $900 and say, yeah, you'll pay it back. He's like, I want you to be responsible for this money. You
Hmm.
got to pay me back. And I mean, I had a job, so it wasn't like hard to pay back. I just paid him back on my next paycheck, but it was like, you know, you got to do this. So yeah, I think there's nothing wrong with that. Even with like your own kids, set those boundaries, make those
Well,
rules, teach responsibility. It's important.
this is, I'm not trying to like humble brag here. I just think this is an amusing anecdote to contrast your story. But my dad needed to get into his house and he didn't have a down payment. And this is right before housing exploded. And otherwise, he would have been screwed because he didn't have savings, because he's been hurt by financially over the years and has lost a lot of it. But he needed down payment and I was doing well financially. We both got into our houses about the same time. So luckily, I was able to get my down payment and help him with his at the same time, right? He needed $9,000 right after I made my down payment, and it drained me down to my last $20. I shit you not, right? But I was able to do it. And as I was handing him over the money, he's like, all right, I'm going to break out this spreadsheet and I'm going to be able to pay you back. And he put in these calculations. He's like, it's going to compound with interest and it's going to be inflation. And I'm going to put in this percentage. I was like, what the shit are you talking about? I didn't swear. I don't swear to my parents, obviously, and I wasn't swearing at the time.
Does anyone
I was
swear to
like,
their parents? Are you allowed to
but I
do
was like,
that? Like,
but I was like,
yeah.
what is compound? But I was like, what's compounding interest? Just take the money. I was like, just give me back the money when you. I was like, even if it takes you 5 years, just give me back $9,000. I was like, I didn't understand inflation. I didn't understand compounding interest. I was like, just give me back. Yeah, I lost money on the deal. I don't even think he get. I think I ended up forgiving him the money because he's helped me out so much over my lifetime. Like
Yeah.
he sent me on like an LDS mission, and I thought this is like an easy way for me to be able to like pay back opportunities it gave me growing up and going to college and helping me pay for some of that early college before I was able to take over, right? Like I had an opportunity to be able to lift them up as I grew up. But I love the contrast of like you had to sign something and I was like, what the hell is compound interest? Just give me back exactly $9,000 in 5 years, and I would have lost hundreds of dollars from inflation over that, and he would have made money on it. It's so stupid.
Yeah, but you know, what is that, right? What does it matter? But I think, yeah, so set boundaries and be kind. And I kind of lost the point of what we were talking about, but
Yeah, me
Spider-Man
too.
is
But
good, and so is Aunt May, and be a good person. And if you've got extra money, give it to people who need it.
find an Aunt May, but if you can, even better, be an Aunt May.
Yes. Ooh, there we go. Much more succinctly put. That's
Yeah.
Do what Shan said. Forget what I said.
Aspire to be one.
Yeah.
All right. Do you have anything else to add? This is where story-wise ending the
Yes.
episode.
Yeah. The only thing to add is that right before the ends of story is Martin Lee comes in and he says that he's going to be going on a trip for a little while, and that's pretty much it. So that was like the very last story after you crash on Aunt May's couch and she gives Peter $200 in an envelope, and he tries to protest and then says that he'll pay it back, probably with compound interest. So. Yeah.
What the hell is compound interest?
So next time we'll have lots of other good Spider-Man stuff to talk about. But,
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for joining us. Please like, comment, and subscribe. We know you won't comment unless you want to hate on me for all the mistakes I made during this episode. Follow us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Listen to Eric's Indie Corner on Thursdays, and that's going to do it for us this week. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
See ya.
Outro. Bleep-a-doof, bleep-a-deep, bloop-a-dee-blow.